So I think if you look at...
Can you give an example?
Well, if you look at maybe on 2030 or so, you may buy your last mobile phone.
Welcome to The Switch, not another podcast. The Switch is a collaboration between Baseload Capital and DNB, aiming to accelerate the green transition. We want our podcast to be a central hub for knowledge exchange within the fields of renewables and green transition. Hosted by Kristina Hagström-Ilevska and produced by Emil and Jacob.
Welcome back to The Switch, not another podcast. You are listening to part 2 with our guest Daniel Akenine. It was such an interesting discussion and we didn't have time to finish it, so we decided that we will roll on episode 2. If you haven't listened to the first part of this interview, I really recommend you to do so. But without further ado, it's time for us to dive into the discussion and continue the talk on trend, moral, and the future. Are you ready?
He is the National Chief Technology Officer at Microsoft. He has a long celebrated career in information technology. During this episode, he and Kristina will discuss Microsoft's goal to be carbon negative and how technology can help us to do the switch. Let's give a warm Switch welcome to Daniel Akenine.
Last time we ended on a note where we started to discuss moral versus technology, and it was so interesting that we could not let Daniel go. We had simply to continue the discussion. So thank you for staying with us and back to another episode of The Switch.
Happy to be here.
Good. Listen, so we ended up with the topic where we're discussing from an example of Angela Merkel and that she is a moral leader of a society. And there we ended up where we talked about what's the conflict between actually technology and the moral. Is there a conflict in the future?
Well, there are a lot of potential conflicts. It's not necessarily conflict per se, but of course technology will mean that you can live in a certain way that could create a lot of new conflicts in society.
What kind of conflicts could that be, for example?
Well, I think it's an interesting question. So if you look at technology, and if you are a startup, for instance, and you want to become a billionaire, so what kind of technology would you invest in and try to innovate in? Well, in general, that's quite a simple question. You would try to do something that will make life easier for you and me. So if you can, pinpoint that, so then everybody would buy something that makes life easier if it's affordable. So of course it's about the price as well. So I think that means that technology innovations means that we as humans become more and more lazy, to be honest. If you look at I don't know, you remember the movie Wall-E, the Disney movie?
Definitely, the big people sitting in the chairs.
Exactly. Yeah. I think that's actually one trend that kind of technology innovations is driving
so for the listeners and viewers who are out there, Wall-E is a movie about a small robot that actually is trying to clean up the world as the humans left it because it was as a disaster, and it travels up to a big spaceship, basically a world, a metaverse, let's say, where people are living, but they are living through the screen, in a sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's. I think the writers of that movie was quite intelligent of kind of trying to speculate about a future. But is that the future that we would like to live? Because that's kind of you have the curling parents syndrome we're talking about in Sweden. And I think that would be kind of the curling. The technology would be curling us as humans. There would be no problems. Everything would basically be fixed. Instead of you fixing it, technology will fix it before you. So you don't have any problems with relations. I will talk to my wife's bot that will negotiate with my bot, and we don't have any conflicts at all. Is that really the life that we want to live? And I think that's a really interesting question, because that could be where technology is driving us.
So we need to answer the question, what kind of life would we like to live? Is that the base?
Yes.
Who's ready to answer that question?
Yeah. And of course, that's the very, very difficult question to answer, because that also shifts all the time. But there are so many interesting technology innovations that could, for instance, so what if you could actually take a very hyper-advanced pill that will make you happy? If you actually have this kind of happy pill that people has been talking about for decades, really.
They're trying them.
Yeah, they were trying, but if it really existed in a way that you could just take a pill and it would,
feel happiness coming.
And you would basically feel, when you are happy, that's a very nice feeling, but in general, you are not happy 24 hours a day. But
isn't happiness feeling that you're not happy and becoming happy?
Yeah, that's a good point as well, and that's a good question. Because I think if there was such a pill that would make us chemically happy all the time, that could possibly, be invented. I think a lot of people would take that because it would be an easier life. It would be a nicer life. But then again, is that really, the life that we would like to live? And I think those kind of, answers and questions are really moral questions and philosophical questions. But it used to be speculations. But what technology can do is make those questions real.
Yeah.
And that's interesting.
But it's not speculations anymore, because we are in a society where we're talking about the metaverse, for example. And I mean, that's not far away from WALL-E in a sense. I mean, you would be able to go. You would send your bot to the doctor, correct? If you look at metaverse, is that the technology that will start making us ask the questions we need?
Could be. It could be. I don't think it will be in the short term. So even if you put glasses on and live in another world, you still have to eat. You still have to do all of the biological things as well. And I think still it is much more, rewarding to meet somebody in real life. But of course, you could continue the technology innovations there as well. So if you have maybe virtual reality glasses that is creating a virtual reality that is basically full reality. Let's say that you have a virtual reality that is, it feels like the real reality. That would be very different situation then, for instance. So I think the technology could help us to drive into person. Well, this kind of metaverse virtual reality would be challenging the real reality as well.
Well, metaverse, from an energy perspective, challenge. I know we have a really good question from one of the producers, actually, that would like to ask regarding metaverse. Jacob, are you ready?
Yes. So I have a question about this metaverse. So it's this digital world that's being built. There's no corona. There's no vaccine passports. There's no climate crisis. What will happen to the green transition? Will it accelerate it, or will it be a challenge?
It could help. Maybe so I think you could pinpoint different issues that happens with metaverse. But if you think about it, it is a way of not necessarily traveling so much, which is part of the problem of a very dense city People spending a lot of time traveling, which is, of course, not so sustainable. It could also mean that if you could do a lot of things outside the city that you normally... So why do you move into a city, really? It is to spend time with other people, to be where it happens. Yeah. It's closeness. So there's a lot of attractiveness with cities. But if you have a successful metaverse, and that's where you spend...
Socialize
spend time. Maybe there's no or less need to actually have cities as we have them today. So that could mean that technology might, produce homes that are fully sustainable, that you can basically place everywhere. You could go off-grid, you can produce your own energy, you could produce your own water, etc.
So actually the technology could make us go much more natural.
Could, yeah. Because I think that's another trend in society. Because when I'm talking about this kind of metaverse and living in the... I think a lot of people is saying, oh, that's not natural. I do not want to go there. I think that's also a reaction from a lot of people.
I don't want a chip in my arm.
No. People. I think there is different people that has different approaches to this. A lot of people say this is fantastic. I really want to go there. I want to explore technology and what it can do and how it can augment and enhance me. But there are, of course, people that will say, this is scary and I genuinely don't want that. So I think you will see a trend in society that will be anti-technology as well. So I think you will see maybe a division in society where you have parts of society going to become very technical and use more and more technology, and you have parts of society maybe going into to live outside cities, self-sustainable houses with kind of advanced houses as well, because a house has to be advanced if you want to be safe.
What does an advanced house mean? What could that be? Can you paint us a picture?
Well, if you look at it today, it's quite hard to build a house that is not existing in the grid. So the grid, I mean the electricity grid, I mean the water grid, everything that you connect to the
society,
house. Yeah. So, but of course, there are solutions today that could build a house much more modular. You could say that, well, I could put the house in the middle of the forest, basically, and it could still work. You could have, batteries that could store energy. You could have a lot of solar power, maybe some otherwise wind power as well to get, the energy that you need. And you could have, full sustainability when it comes to food as well. You could actually have that. You could plant in a garden house surrounding that. So
actually, I could be like Microsoft. Like my existence can actually make the world, the environment a little bit better. Do you reckon that people don't understand enough, or do we have too little goals? Let me just take an example. Microsoft, you actually have a goal that's set that you're not going to be carbon neutral or anything like that. You're going to be carbon negative. So that's the goal of what you're doing. Should we scare people more? Should we set higher goals? What is it that we need to do? I mean, like, what was the mindset of Microsoft when you actually said not neutral, not good enough, but actually negative? How did you come to that?
Yes.
Wow, I look forward to that. As long as I have my metaverse, because I'm a social person, so I need both of it.
Yeah, and then you have probably the persons that do both as well. But what I'm saying is that technology has the potential of changing the way that you live so much that just by changing making that decisions could also create conflicts in society on how the society should stay together. And today you don't see those conflicts too much. It's like everybody is you don't have people using mobile phones and people not using mobile phones.
No,
There's very few who doesn't do that. But I think the closer the technology gets to you as a person, the more those more ethical and philosophical decisions will be dividing population into different beliefs.
Can you give me an example of an ethical discussion that would divide people?
Absolutely. So one example would be if you have a class of kids, for instance, and let's say in 5 years' time, you might have some kind of augmented technology that makes it easier to learn. So it could be, I don't know, it could be a lot of things. But let's say it could help you learn math better, or it could be help you learn a language better. So that's technology that they could use. It could be harmless as well. But then you might have a class where 25%, 75% maybe of the children are augmented with technology. So it means they have more powers than the other children in the class.
And what would say that they have more power? Is it like a
the
cost
technology will help them become better at the topics like learning a new language, for instance.
But some of them will not, or?
Yeah. That, because if you have a divided population on how you should use technology, you will always have one part, parents, etc., which
that
believes this is not the way forward.
Not going into technology, and the 70% will go into so we will divide them between.
And I think that's, so how do you, if you are a teacher in a class like that, how would you deal with that? So will you give all the augmented children with better, will you give them better grades because they perform better? They perform better because of the technology, but they perform better. So I think that's a super hard question, and that's also kind of, you could say that,
so what do we actually put grades on? Is that the technology, how you use the technology, or your actual knowledge? Well, yeah, that's a very interesting question.
So, and you can come back to this type of kind of new moral dilemmas, so to say, where technology will.
Do you foresee any dilemmas when it comes into energy?
From a technology perspective, so I don't know. I think in general, when we see the technology, energy coming in the future, it will be electricity. So the future is electric in a way. I think all of the energy that you do consume will in some way or form be consumed by you as an individual through electricity. So I think the dilemmas there is more from a societal perspective, how you produce that technology. But I don't think the big ethical dilemmas is there. I think the big ethical dilemmas is when you are using technology as an individual and person to augment yourself.
But could there be a dilemma where we say okay, so you, Daniel, have an amount of energy that you can consume, and you cannot consume more than that because it's going to be unfair in the world, so that anyone in the world needs to have the same amount of energy to be able to consume. Is that a possible scenario?
I do believe that we will have enough energy in the world. But what we are describing is something called, it's like the Swedish motboken, where you could, if you remember, I don't know when it was, in the 30s, 40s, 50s, something like that, you couldn't buy alcohol as much as you wanted. You had a ration of alcohol. And that was morally, really, moral reason to do that. I think it was, society was seeing the damages that happened, and that was the moral part of it as well, saying this is how much you should buy. But did that work? Did people like it? No, it neither worked. People didn't like it. Was it necessary? Not really. It works without motboken today as well. So I don't think that's it's not a good goal to have that kind of energy pot, if you want to call it like that.
So instead of restricting and limiting, we should use technology to be able to produce more and better?
Yes, and if you think about it, there is not a need for you to consume that enormous amount of energy, really. What do you need energy for? I think it is for transportation. That will be electric through your electric cars. It is heating in your house. And then there is, some
Cooling.
other thing. Cooling. Cooling is on the increase as well. But if you had, how much energy as you could have, what would you do then? Still, I don't know.
I have a question, like a little bit of a sidetrack maybe, but we are talking a lot about what you do on a personal level and have a personal part of electricity, but industries overall is consuming a lot of energy as well. If we're going to talk about Sweden, maybe. Could the companies or the industries maybe have a pot? Could that be a solution that you could, implement?
Well, if let's say it would be necessary, then I think it is done today to some extent. Because it's connected to carbon dioxide emissions, of course. But let's hypothetically say there is no carbon dioxide emissions because it's all natural, etc. Then the question would be, would it be necessary then to? Let's say it would be necessary then. Yeah, I think that could be. But if you look at the really big energy consumption companies, they are normally in, it's like SSAB, for instance, where they're producing, iron and those chemical things. That would, of course, hugely impact those kind of industries. And if they have a very small pot, they cannot produce, basically. And so that's kind of the consequences out to the society as well. So it sounds, if you have to do it, you have to do it intelligently, in a way that you have to take care of society as well and what we want.
Yeah. Just a discussion.
Yeah.
Good. So what kind of trends are there within technology?
Oh, wow. There is. So I'm mainly working on kind of information technology related technology, and of course, you have the kind of the trend on metaverse. I think we were discussing that a little bit on how that could impact. But that's also, I think, one of the key things that has to happen when it comes to metaverse is better hardware as well.
Hardware being the goggles and the...
Exactly, the way you interact with the... And I think that could be... that could create a dramatic shift on how we interact with, for instance, metaverse and the internet as well. So I think if you look at...
Can you give an example?
Well, if you look at maybe on 2030 or so, you may buy your last mobile phone. Because today you interact normally with the mobile.
Yeah.
But I think from 2030 and going ahead, I think the technology when it comes to projecting the same information that you're using on a mobile will be in your glasses, basically. So glasses that looks like these glasses.
So they will look at pictures and laugh at us how we were walking like this instead?
Yes, that would be so Stone Age.
Stone Age picture, okay,
yes. And I think so if you have, kind of a dramatic increase in the hardware there, so how you could actually interact through your eyes, I think that could, dramatically increase metaverse, but also how you connect to metaverse in the real life as well. So that means you will be much more connected. So I think that's an interesting trend to look out for.
Yeah, interesting. Other trends that we need to be aware of?
Well, another trend that people are talking about right now is more like what's going to happen with internet and with the web. So people are talking about web 3.0 today, and that's more of how can you decentralize the web and the services, the social media and all of that stuff. And I think that's...
What does that actually mean?
Yeah, so if you really deep down, try to understand that, it's also a little bit fluffy, to be honest.
It usually is.
Yes, it is. But if you really try to understand, so I've been going a little bit deeper on Web 3.0, and I don't think it's based on blockchain technology, you could say, that where you could create a social media network, for instance. So you and I create a social media web, but there is no real owner of that social media network.
Okay.
it's technology, but we own it together.
So basically going away from someone owning all your data to you owning your own data.
Yeah, to
or
some
the blockchain,
extent, or you actually own the technology that is processing the data to some extent. So it's a way of getting away from centralization to decentralization. But it's very immature right now. So if you go deep into the technology, I don't think it's currently not really working. But it is a trend, and if there is new kind of innovations there, that could be very interesting as well, because it could transform the existing kind of centralized web to something else, at least.
Interesting. So, is there any other trend that you foresee, or is it so? What we do have here is the metaverse, meaning moving away from actually moving. And then we have the decentralization through 3.0, the web. Is that what you think that listeners and the company owners and individuals out there need to start understanding?
So if you are not in that domain right now, you could wait a little bit. But what I'm thinking about is more on a 5 to 10 year perspective. And you will see a lot of hype, a lot of discussions on those technologies right now. But I think the real effects, they will come in a couple of years where you see So if you want to explore that, yes, try to understand and see how your company can, use these technologies. But otherwise, you could also wait a little bit.
So in that case, I agree with you here, but what are the trends that you need to already be working with or disappear? What would you say? Or top three?
I think the trend that has been going on for a couple of years is the trend of AI, artificial intelligence. And what that really means today is machine learning and how you can create value from a lot of different data. And I think that trend is a strong. You are in the middle of that trend.
Yeah.
So
either you jump onto it, or you're probably going to disappear in a sense.
It depends on what you are doing, etc. But it could definitely be beneficial for you, depending on what you do today. I think that is kind of the key trends. There are other trends as well, like digital twins, etc. But I think those are kind of the most interesting trends, at least right now.
If you listen to the discussion what we've had today, I think that there are some really beneficial facts for any kind of company that wants to move into a switch, meaning being informed about what's coming, but also jump on the trends at the right time. But I think, and I really thank you for helping us raise the awareness of that technology is a solution, but we need to be the ones that are driving it. We need to understand it and the consequences of it. So thank you very much, Daniel, for helping us understand this and to give us the greater picture.
Thank you for inviting.
It's been an honor to have you. Thank you very much. Thank you for listening in on the continued discussion with Daniel Akenine from Microsoft. A super exciting episode where we learned a lot, and most of all, we learned that the involvement of you and me is going to be crucial to make the switch. If you want to listen to us and continue to spread knowledge regarding how we can do the switch, make sure you subscribe. And if you want more people to be part of the switch, make sure to share and talk about us so that we are many that together can make the switch. I wish you a great day wherever you are in the world. Stay safe and make sure that someone else is safe as well.